I finished American Graffiti. I was broke because I didn't get paid very much to do American Graffiti. It took me 2.5 years to do it. And so I was desperate to get another job. When I had gotten the deal to do American Graffiti, the United Artists, who I made the first deal with to develop it, said, "You got any other ideas?" And I said, "Well, I've been thinking about kind of a space adventure, Saturday matinee serial kind of movie." And they said, "Okay, well, we'll do that too." So when I finished American Graffiti, the Universal was not going to release it. I was dead broke, and so I had to get a job just to live. And so I had this deal to do this space film, and so I went to United Artists with this idea of the space film, and they turned it down. And then I went to Universal for the idea of the space film, and they turned it down. And finally, in the process of us screening the film for anybody and everybody who would look at it in order to try to get it released, American Graffiti, Alan Ladd Jr. saw it, who was the head of 20th Century Fox, and he said, "I love this movie. You're very talented, and what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to get this space thing off the ground." And he said, "Okay, well, I'll fund the screenplay." And I got the deal to do the screenplay, and it wasn't really until 6 months later that American Graffiti came out and was a hit. This was all done when I was starving, and the $20,000 I got to write the screenplay was like more money than I'd seen in 2 years. So I was very relieved that I could now sit back, write a screenplay, have a job, eat a decent meal, and that sort of thing.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 625, Full of Sid, with me, Bryan Young, a host of the show, and with me, as ever, the redoubtable Holly Fry.
Well, not always as ever. I missed last week completely.
You had stuff going on, and I was out of town.
I did. Had a little surprise oral surgery, which everybody loves.
Yeah. It happens. I hope you're all better now.
I still got a mouthful of stitches, but it's fine. It's fine.
Oof. That's always the worst.
Yeah, I won't go into gory details, but it's not uncommon for people to have anxiety about dental procedures. And I did, and everyone was very reassuring. And then it turned out I was right to have anxiety because it went sideways. They had to stop in the middle to take x-rays to figure out what was going on. It was a rough one, is what I'm saying. But I'm good. All is well. Healing just fine.
Well, I'm glad you're able to talk with me because I think today's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, I'm excited because I just feel like I need some good Star Wars chitter chatter time.
Yeah, so today as we record this is we're recording this on March 22nd. When you're listening to this could be anybody's guess, right? That's the nature of podcasts. But we're recording this on March 22nd, 2026, which is the 50th anniversary of the first day of shooting of A New Hope.
Yeah.
So 50 years ago today, they started rolling cameras on this little thing we call Star Wars.
Do you get as wistful and like kind of emotional about that as I do?
We're like almost a decade and a half into a podcast about Star Wars, so I'm assuming I probably do.
I will tell you, I'm actually surprised by how choked up I get about it. Like I knew this date was coming. I've been talking about it with friends and stuff, and um, we knew we were right here in the thing. My beloved and I talked about it just the other day, but somehow today, seeing, I think it was the ILM post about it, I just got like emotional. I got weepy about it because it was like, this is where this is where it all started. So much of like my life, my joy, my identity was being cultivated by people I didn't even know, and I didn't even know about it, halfway around the world as a little obnoxious child, was, probably playing with Barbies. I don't
Yeah,
know. It just seemed
yeah.
big.
It does seem big, and I think the one that seems a little bigger for me is Empire, though,
Mhm.
because A New Hope still feels like, well, that was before I was born.
Right.
Um, and
So see you in a few
particularly,
years when you're crying about it.
I think the one that feels even bigger is Jedi because that's the one I remember. You know what
Right.
I
That's
mean?
that was your entree into the whole
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, and the ones that screw with me the most are like the prequel anniversaries, like 25 years of Phantom Menace is the one that like really, it's like, really? Is that?
Excuse me?
Yeah,
Pardon?
exactly. Like, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around that because like that's a weird one. But 50 years of A New Hope is bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think May 25th, 2027 is going to be
My,
a much larger deal.
yeah. Yeah. Minds will be blown.
Um, but I thought it would be interesting and fun to have a conversation about that first day of shooting. But not just that first day of shooting, but just sort of the behind the scenes of A New Hope. And I just think that would be fun. It's weird to think that it is 50 years ago, and it's so weird to think that like 50 years ago now, Mark Hamill and the crew were, you know, sitting in front of cameras getting Star Wars done, and George Lucas was doing that. It's so great that we still have these folks around now
Yeah.
still. I mean, we've lost a lot of them, but we still have so many of them um still.
Yeah. Yeah. Far away in northern Africa, they were all just making it happen.
Which is kind of funny, like to set the scene, like Star Wars had been sort of in some phase of production for 3 years at this point. Um, and this is the first filming they were gonna do is on location in Tunisia, and they've got 100 English crew members and about 25 Tunisians that were going to be working on the project, and they arrive the night before, and they're all just the common language, the most common language they have between them on the set is French,
Yeah.
which
Makes
I found
sense.
kind of fascinating, like between uh, the locals and the Brits on the set. That French is the most.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world, though.
Yeah, I mean, Tunisia was a French colony at that point, and
Yeah,
um,
I mean, even for what it's worth, I found the exact same thing in Morocco. Even
yeah,
though Morocco, finally gained its liberation, and depending on who you talk to, there are a lot of people that are very ready to say very strong anti-French things. But if you're in a pickle, and like I don't speak Arabic, um, I found I could whip out a little French and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, 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 I got you." Like so, so it seems very normal to me that that would have been the one.
so what was shot that day on March 22nd, which everyone sort of reported that they didn't sleep well that night because for one they all had like a cocktail party the night before.
As you do.
Um, but the scene that they shot that day was in the salt flats of Nefta, and it was the Lars homestead, which was
Yeah.
the purchase of C-3PO and R2-D2,
Mhm.
and part of Luke and the giant twin suns, and Luke and C-3PO rushing out of the homestead to look for R2-D2. So it was like an all day sort of thing, and into
Yeah.
the night kind of situation. They were getting a lot done. Um, and if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense from a production standpoint, especially when you kind of have to remember that Star Wars was a very low budget film.
Yeah, I mean I kind of laugh when I think about it because part of me, we always hear the story of George's direction regarding dialogue being faster, more intense, but I feel like that's how he learned to make movies, right? He was always kind of shoestringing it and having to be really intent, like meaning he had intention, and really intense, meaning he had to be like just ready to go and keep going.
Yeah.
So he was always faster and more intense in all
Um,
the ways.
so they talked about how like the most complicated scene that day, like the stuff with Luke rushing out with 3PO is pretty straightforward. The stuff with Luke looking at the sunset is pretty straightforward. That's, like Luke and Anthony Daniels are pretty easy to deal with, right? On their own, they're like one or two actors in a shot. But the most
Right.
complicated stuff is going to be stuff with lots of background, lots of robots, and so purchasing the
Jawas and
droids.
droids.
Yeah. Um, and Anthony Daniels was pretty much in that costume all day. And it he he said that it took 2 hours to put his costume on that first day. So like, I mean, imagine being in it all day and
Oof.
imagine 2 hours to put it on, and you're working from morning till night. That just sounds brutal. And he has
It
this
does.
this anecdote where he talks about how he was excited to see there was a chair with his name on it, where he was like, "Oh, that's exciting." But then they realized pretty quickly
Couldn't
that,
sit in it.
yeah, so they had this like ironing board kind of situation that he could lean against.
They Hannibal lectured him.
Yeah. Um so that was a big problem. Um One of the other huge problems that they had that Gary Kurtz talked about in the Making of Star Wars book was R5. Like
Yeah.
R5 was a problem because as a remote controlled droid, like anything that could go wrong did go wrong. The batteries were wearing down too quickly, like the legs on the droid, like his center leg wouldn't drop at the right point. It just wouldn't work properly.
Yeah.
And then when it came time to blow his motivator, like the droid handlers were like, "What do you mean we've got to blow his head off?" They're like, that's in the script." And they're like, "But all the remote control parts that control him
In his
being
head.
they're all yeah, all everything that controls his remote controls are in his head." So they had to like really quickly come up with an option to blow his motivator on set. Um, yeah, which is like it just seems like that anything that can go wrong will go wrong sort of situation.
Yeah.
Um,
But now he's a hero, so it's fine.
yeah. So like what they ended up doing is like they had like a fiberglass like backup droid, and they just took the head off of that.
Oh, a hero droid.
Yeah, they took the fiberglass, yeah, just the head off of that and blew that one's motivator, so they wouldn't have to mess up the remote controls.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, but one of the things that they said that really helped on that first day was how calm George Lucas was.
Yeah.
Um, like they like Mark Hamill kind of remarked that like he was really just sort of remarkably calm, that like none of this really bothered him. Um, and he was just he knew exactly kind of what he was cutting on set. And if things went wrong in one part of a shot, he'd be okay with that because he knew he wasn't using that part of the shot or whatever. And
Right.
be okay with mistakes in one part because that wasn't the part he needed or whatever. Like he had a really keen mind for what he was doing editing wise. Um, and so like none of that stuff bothered him as much, which is actually like having done a ton of film editing and directing. Um, I can attest to that. Like if you know what you're doing editing wise, you can make decisions like that on set really easy and say like, no, you know what? I don't need that part. I can cut here, I can cut there. I know what I need. Which is actually another one of those reasons that I think um, some of the stories about how like Lucas didn't cut these movies, is a little overblown, right?
Yeah.
If he's the one on set, particularly in A New Hope, saying, no, these are the pieces of the film I need to take into the editing room. Um, the editors only have those pieces to work with. It reminds me a little bit of a story of Alfred Hitchcock working with David O. Selznick. And David O. Selznick, I want to say it was the Paradine case. Um, Selznick and Hitchcock hated each other. And Selznick was one of those producers that would go in and re-edit filmmakers' movies after they were done with the movie, but before it came out to release. And Hitchcock knew this. And Selznick was sort of the first American producer that brought Hitchcock out to the U.S. And Hitchcock only shot and printed exactly what he wanted the film to look like.
Right.
And Selznick was so furious because he literally couldn't cut the film any other way except for how Hitchcock intended.
Yeah.
Because Hitchcock was so meticulous and careful about how he shot things. And George Lucas being able to go like, no, it doesn't matter if that droid fell over. I'm not using that part of the shot. And being very cool and collected about it makes perfect sense for a guy who was an accomplished editor at that point.
Yeah, it's very interesting to juxtapose that against the parts that stressed him out. You know how he's talked pretty openly about like the phases towards like the film opening when he felt like he was having a nervous breakdown and he was just so stressed all the time. And uh it's just interesting to compare those, right? In the process of filmmaking, like the hardcore part, being on set, knowing what shots you want, being able to like stay chill with your actors and create an atmosphere where people are going to trust you because you're not flying off the handle, versus this man who was describes himself just falling apart as they get towards the actual release, is just a very interesting psychological study.
Yeah, well, and part of it too is the effects
Yeah.
because that was so much like he knew how he knew how the filming was going to work,
Yeah.
but the effects were just like, yeah, nobody's ever done this before.
But also, I mean, it speaks a lot to his own trust in himself as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
right? Because so many filmmakers, and I'm not criticizing this at all, I would be the same, will be like, let's get 27 different versions of this so we have coverage in case anything, I missed anything, you know what I mean? Whereas he's like, no, I know exactly what I need and I have it. Thank you. Let's move to the next thing.
Yeah. Um there's a there's a quote from one of the producers in the book that says um or well from Mark Hamill that said like I never felt like George was slighting the film. like giving it short shrift or anything. He says, I'm sure there was a certain amount of compromise, but we moved really fast. And then one of the producers says George is very good at compromising. You know, when R2 falls off the ramp or something, he doesn't mind because he knows he's not going to use the shot at that point. He'll cut away to something else. He's prepared to ride with those punches.
Yeah.
Um, and then, you know, sort of at the end of that day, they shot the first of 355 scenes, and they tried to shoot some of Luke with the twin sons, but the weather didn't cooperate. And Anthony Daniels um, said that at the end of the first day, I was covered in scars and scratches. I was very, very tired and very cross, and that was the last time I ever wore the costume all day.
Which is just smart.
Yeah. Well, you don't know. You know, you don't know until you do that, like what your limits are going to be.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, even aside from his side of that equation, from the costuming standpoint, until you have someone in the costume using it, you don't really know what it's going to be like. I mean, you can do fittings, of course, but like there is a vast difference between doing a costume fitting on somebody and them being even in hour 2 or 3 on a set. You know what I mean? It is a different world at that point. So I'm not surprised that neither he nor the costume department was like fully ready for how grueling that was going to be. But I'm also glad that they shifted and made that not the way they tried to operate going forward.
Yeah. Um, so that week they ended up shooting um Robert Watts, the producer, said that they ended up shooting 20-hour days that week when they could, and they ended up splitting into two units to try to cover as much stuff as they could. So they'd send out a second unit to get stuff with like the Jawas doing stuff or like
Yeah.
the stormtroopers doing stuff. And you know, Alec Guinness finally showed up on like day two, and they, you know, kept going with things. It's I don't know, it's amazing that they started with on location stuff too, which seems
Yeah.
like you've got everybody really out of their element, which probably made the onset stuff like on the onset stuff at Elstree or Leavesden back in England probably, or Pinewood. Which ones? They shot at all three of those. Um,
Yeah, I don't
this
remember the order.
Yeah, they it probably made that stuff run a lot more smoothly. You know, if you've got the crew just working their guts out in Africa for weeks to start with, um, and then everything's a little easier when they just have to show up on the sets. And it probably gave
Yeah.
them a lot of time to work on the sets back there as
Yeah, I
well.
mean, the other thing to consider, and I think, because I've always thought that too, or I did at one point think about that, like, gosh, why did they do the hard location first? But the other thing is, even if you're not doing 20-hour days, filming a movie is grueling. You know what I mean? People work really long hours regardless. And if they had held it till later in production when everyone was fatigued, they might not have gotten all those shots that they needed in the time they were allotted to be there.
Yeah,
So it's just, it was smart planning.
it's like amazing going through the making of book and seeing like Star Wars looks so whiz bang, and then you look at the behind the scenes, and it's like they literally have mules carrying their
Yeah.
production equipment,
Yeah.
and it's it's very much just there's this idea in Martin Scorsese talks about it in film school or in film making, that there's this like it doesn't matter how you get the shot, and the shot has no intrinsic like emotional value. Like how you get it It really depends on how it's used, right? And like it doesn't matter what elements are used to create it, or how you get it, or how you steal it, um, or what makes up that shot, as long as it's there when you need it to use it in the film. And, by hook or by crook, or, by mule delivery,
Hmm.
um, that's what's important. And, whatever film trickery they needed to use in Star Wars, they did. And I mean, Star Wars really relied on every cinematic trick in the book up to that point in filmmaking, whether that was forced perspective, whether that was, matte paintings, blue screens, like, uh, you know, just every sort of special effect to that point. And things that you don't think of as special effects, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, a lot of people don't look at Citizen Kane as a special effects picture, right? But like that film is a special effects picture,
Oh yeah.
and everything that Orson Welles and Greg Toland learned on that film, they absolutely used in Star Wars and utilized in Star Wars. Um, it's really stunning stuff, like how just like the everyday business of filmmaking that we think about, that feels like it's just sort of done normally in post and digital filmmaking now, was a big production then, or
Right.
a big deal that feels almost invisible now.
Yeah. It also is interesting knowing that. I mean, we all know this, but I think it bears repeating at every possible opportunity. Knowing that George Lucas, who was a very astute student of film, used all of those tricks available to him and then still was like, we have to come up with some new stuff because I want to do things we can't do with these. Like I will forever marvel at that man's intent in terms of being like, well, we have to figure out new stuff because this isn't going to be the film I want otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird to see how much he's changed filmmaking over 50 years.
Oh yeah.
And to think about what was going on in film 50 years prior to that, right? Like think
Yeah.
about what was going on 50 years prior to Star Wars. Um, you know,
Nosferatu.
yeah. Um, like you've got, I mean, yeah, like films in the 1920s like had taken a quantum leap in what you could do. But I mean, like, even like looking a little further back than 50, you look at the films of George Méliès. Is it Méliès or Méliès? I don't know.
I have heard it both ways.
So have I, and I never know which one is right. And I asked, like, I went to Paris the first time. Um, Patty was my wife was taking she was minoring in French when she'd gone back to school, and went to France for a trip with her French class. And I tagged along, and I straight up asked her French teacher in front of his, like, Méliès's grave, which was it? And he was like, I have no idea, honestly.
Right, because it's a proper name
Yeah,
that has been pronounced both ways so frequently.
for
Like
more than
proper names
100
don't
years.
always follow the rules of grammar and normal word pronunciation. I think it's Miliez. That makes the most sense to me.
But looking at his films and what he was doing and what he was capable of, even what's now, 140 years ago or 130 years ago, um, and just seeing the magic that he was doing and the quantum leaps that they took from that point to Star Wars, and from Star Wars to now, like we just kind of take that stuff for granted. You know, it's pretty astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's wild to me too because there are, even though there were always people like trying to innovate, there do seem to often be these kind of concentrated pockets where things really jump. And I Nosferatu is actually an interesting one in that regard because Fritz Wagner, who was the cinematographer on it, like he's the person that invented the dolly shot. Like he invented like handheld camera movement, and like following the protagonist with the handheld, while they were actually moving through a scene, and developed a lot of other camera work techniques that got used and became the standard for like the next, 50 years. They're still used today, but like it was a long time before things started to get again kind of like not reinvented because again those are still being used, but like all new concepts of what you could do with a camera started to really happen. So it is interesting. I feel like George and the team that he put together for Star Wars, and especially in that first, really each, the first trilogy and then again with the prequels, like they're flashpoints of technical development in filmmaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, he every sort of film technology kind of takes this leap forward with a new vocabulary of filmmaking,
Hmm.
and where you've got the silent era where they're just learning the basic vocabulary of film films, like film vocabulary of like, okay, how do we juxtapose images and things like the dolly shot and things. And then you add things like synced sound. I'm not even talking about talking. I'm talking about like sound on the film that you
Yeah.
can have on the soundtrack, or even just a consistent frame rate sort of changed things, because in
Yeah.
those earliest days you had like um variable frame rates.
Yeah. And
um
most films in that stage were being they were essentially plays that were being filmed.
yeah.
Like the idea of changing up locations and moving shots was like miles away at that point. So,
And then at the advent of sound, you had all these filmmakers have to learn an all new vocabulary of like, what can we accomplish with this? And I think one of those best examples of that is again going to Fritz Lang with M,
oh
right?
yeah.
Where Peter Lorre's character is sort of like the way the whistling is used in that film. It's like another layer of excellent vocabulary. And then when color's introduced, and then you've got all the different sorts of aspect ratios. Like that feels like the big thing in the 50s and the 60s were the aspect ratios, right? Like VistaVision or
Yeah.
uh, um, Cinerama or things like that, where it's like, how can we make the films more immersive in that way and showing more of it to people. Um, and then by the 70s you've got George Lucas saying like, okay, we've taken all of these things, we know what all these things are, how can we take that further leap? And then with the prequels it was like, okay, we've done all that stuff, but how do we make something more immersive but on a budget? And like he took those folks that were working on Young Indy, which I've been watching a ton of lately, um and they're doing these really amazing things with like historical, like they're doing period pieces on TV budgets in the early
Yeah.
90s, and it's
Yeah.
utterly astounding, and they're shooting it on film, and they're doing these digital set extensions. They're doing these like modern um like removals of modern elements in architecture and things like that, like, and it's not terribly noticeable, especially when you're dealing with television um, quality stuff, especially
Right.
broadcast in the 90s, which um,
Left
probably
a
not.
left a bit to be desired.
Yeah, like definitely on broadcast and TV in the 90s, like people aren't going to notice the drop in resolution, because they had to run it through a computer, a 90s level computer to take out modern cars that were down the street further down in the back of the shot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then rebuilding that with, the digital tools. And now we're going through it again where they're figuring things out with, the volume,
Yeah.
and how they can do the effects in advance. I think Solo is so amazing watching them figure that out so that the actors could have that experience on the set of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those things that like it's one super cool and it kind of like just elicits that response of like holy crap. And also it's incredibly heartwarming to watch the actors engage with that and be super excited about it. It's just cool.
Yeah. And Star Wars has been one of those key moments in the 70s, in the 70s through the 80s, in the 90s through the 2000s, and again now in the 20 teens and the 2020s. Um, and I think it's a testament to George Lucas that he's been the one like pushing that stuff
Yeah.
for 5 decades.
Yeah.
Like almost half of cinema, almost half the life of cinematic, uh, you know, pioneering has been
Yeah.
on the shoulders of one guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean I what I really love is that it's all because he loves movies so much. You know what I mean? He's not out here like doing Steve Jobs-esque, look what we've invented. Like he's not doing those. He's just bolstering, supporting, helping people create new technology so he can make more movies and moving on to the next movie where he wants to do more of that. Like I there's something so lovely about how much he clearly just loves the medium and that's everything he does is in service to it, not himself.
Yeah, very much so. Um, so one interesting thing that is in this, um, so Star Wars has been in production for 3 years, or in pre-production and development for 3 years, and March 22nd is the first day of shooting. March 23rd, Alec Guinness arrives on set. They start shooting in Tunisia. Before the end of March is when, so George Lucas was planning on working on rewrites while they were shooting and revisions while they continued working on it. Um, as the story developed, as they saw footage, dailies and things. But when they were unloading the um, equipment from the plane to Tunisia, they dropped his typewriter and it broke. And so he had to borrow the typewriter of one of the secretaries there, which was actually a French language manual typewriter. And this was when he actually decided to kill Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of the film. And it was before the end of March, according to Rinsler's book, that he broke it to Alec Guinness that he decided to kill Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of the movie.
That's wild.
Yeah. Like, okay, you've signed on for this movie. You've already liked the script, but I've decided I'm going to change it now that we've already started shooting scenes.
Right.
Um, and I don't know, that was weird. It's weird to think that like things were still sort of that in flux and that Lucas was still refining his vision that much, even at that point in the production.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that I know this is I keep having a George Love fest, but that's sort of the other thing that I've always admired about him. He's not like he was never like an auteur who was like, my vision is the only vision and it cannot be changed. Like he recognized that art is fluid and that, I mean, he, to the chagrin of some people, right, he still wanted to go back and refine things even, well after they were part of the, public memory. Again, though, it's just all in service of what he thinks is the best story and the best film. Nobody has to agree with it, but like I always admired that about him. Like he knows like his whatever draft he showed up with isn't necessarily the best one. And like he's not so hung up on like this is my work of art that I've created that he can't even go, "Oh, yeah, this is actually going to be better if we switch this." I love that. I think that's incredibly admirable.
So the Tunisia shoot lasted only 2 weeks, and they had to deal with the sandstorm, and they shot all that extra stuff with Biggs and Fixer and Cammy
Hmm.
and the friends, all of that crammed into 2 weeks.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, it's no wonder that they decided to go do more shoots on the Cantina.
Yeah.
Um, and that some of it was on studios as well. I mean, you think Tunisia, you think um Tatooine, it's important to remember that these are just the outdoor shots,
Right.
right? Like anything really indoors is still going to be on the sound stages. So this
Yeah.
2 weeks is just everything that's outside. Harrison Ford didn't go to Tunisia. So like these 2 weeks, that first day of shooting, like Harrison Ford didn't set foot in Tunisia for this shoot. He went straight to England like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing how much they crammed into that. So they filmed all the stuff with the stormtroopers outside, the binary sunset, the Lars homestead, all of that stuff, at Toshi Station and Biggs, um, all of the stuff with the land speeder, right? All the
Yeah.
stuff with there are some pickups that they did get in California, right? Like there are some shots of R2 and 3PO kind of roaming around looking for Jawas. Um, there are definitely pickups that they got elsewhere or later because they needed them for coverage and things like that. But like the stuff with the Sand People attacking Luke, Obi-Wan finding him, um, all that kind of stuff. Them, like all of Mos Eisley's exteriors were shot there. Um, Things like that. They were all shot in the space of that 2 weeks. Stormtroopers in the desert. Uh, it Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's death. Um, so much of that stuff. Like that's a lot to cram into 2 weeks plus a sandstorm.
Hmm. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I mean, that to me makes it that much more sort of poignant and admirable that George Lucas seemed completely relaxed about all of the various challenges that came up.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the challenges, like, it's amazing. There's challenges that sometimes, like, you're not even quite sure how aware of them he was. Um, yeah, I've talked about it on the show before, and I would say, like, I mean, it was a long time ago. Um, look up the episodes where we talked about the passing of Richard Leparmentier. Um, but like he had been a friend, and he had told stories about stuff that went on the set there in England, where the crew was just like, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. We've got to take this movie away from the kid. You know, like they were just not happy with him.
Yeah.
And like, it ended up kind of coming down on enough of them saying like, what are we going to do with this movie? Like it's the kid's movie. Let's just let him have it and we'll just do
Right.
whatever. What the hell do we think we're going to do with this? Um it was weird. I don't know. It was interesting hearing those stories from somebody who was there like that. Like Richard Leparmentier, for those who don't know, like he played Admiral Motti.
Mhm.
Um, and I got to know him a little bit, um, toward the end of his life. Um, and yeah, the stories he had from the set were really amazing. Even though I spent way more time asking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, he was like, "You're the one Star Wars fan I always talk to who wants to know more about the damn Roger Rabbit experience than anything." And we'd get into arguments because he always thought that Gene Hackman would have made a better Eddie Valiant than Bob Hoskins.
What?
Yeah,
With no
yeah.
shade to Gene Hackman, but
You see what I
Hoskins
mean?
is a poem in that movie.
That's what I said. And he's
Yeah,
like,
he's
I think Hackman
amazing.
would have done it. But well, the thing is like Richard just sort of worshipped the ground Hackman walked on. And and Richard, he felt like he'd never been in a better scene and he'd never had a better acting experience than the one scene he got to do in Warren Beatty's Reds with Gene Hackman. And that was like the pinnacle of his acting career. And I think that shaded everything he ever did afterward.
That's wild.
And I was just like, was that even a possibility? And he was like, he was up for it. He just wouldn't do it. And I'm like, I've never heard that before. And he's
Right?
like, yeah, yeah, like he was gonna. And I was like, I don't know. Like maybe he's got some insight. I mean, like he was on set. He was on set every day. Apparently, his part got significantly cut. As Lieutenant Santino in that movie,
Right.
and they paid him to be there on set every day, which is why I had so many questions. Because he was there for everything, and he's like, "Yeah, Hackman," and I was just like,
What?
"Yeah, no, like Hoskins killed it," and he's
Oh,
like,
it's
"Hackman."
so good. So
So
good.
yeah, we had lots of arguments about that. I mean, they were very friendly arguments,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but I'll never forgive him for that. I mean, it's one of those things where like I it's I'll never forget that I've been able to have very serious arguments in my life with Admiral Motti about why Bob Hoskins would have been way better than Gene Hackman in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I mean,
Yeah. But no, he had told stories about how the crew tried to take A New Hope from George Lucas there. And ultimately it came down to them going sort of like, well, what the hell? Why? Like,
it's not our movie. Like if we have a
yeah,
crew coup, what happens next?
yeah, like, what are we going to do with this? He seems to be the only one who does know what's going on. Um, but I heard that there was some like there was some stuff too where like you can notice like I want to know more about like whose idea it was to do some of those shots, like those classic 70s shots with like the Vaseline on the lens kind of stuff.
Right.
Because it all looks like second unit stuff,
Yeah.
in A New Hope. And
Yeah. I don't know.
yeah, and I'm wondering if that was just some crew member going like, "Why aren't we doing this? This is how we shoot things these days."
Right. A DP just being like, get the Vaseline, kids.
Or it was like a nylon sock over a filter
Yeah.
or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
like um because like the three shots in the movie that made it in, you know exactly which ones I'm talking about on the Death Star particularly.
Yeah.
And I think those might have been some of those shots that caused some heartburn. And it was probably shots that I would almost guarantee would get replaced today, or they would have been reshoots if they would have been able to afford it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I
I
really
mean,
like
maybe.
Star Wars. I really
Me
like Star Wars.
too. I'm a fan.
Do you have a favorite behind the scenes of A New Hope story?
I'm trying to. I mean, listen, the obvious one is just all the Greedo stuff, right? I love everything about the Greedo stuff. I
I
love
was
knowing that that mask was originally a Martian that was used in a commercial for frozen peas. I love the Vaseline on his little snoot that George wanted to apply. I love the clothespin, um, kind of quick and dirty mouth articulation setup. I love that sometimes Greedo is wearing easy breezy pumps. I love all of the Greedo stuff.
Yeah, no, I do love that story of George doing the reshoots and asking like, can I put that on the Vaseline? Can I do that? And then him just doing that and just being very satisfied by that.
Yeah, yeah. He's a hands-on director. Um, yeah, it's all the Greedo stuff. Of course it is. I mean, I also love all of the like weird cantina related creature and other things, right? I love knowing that the Momon puppet really like looked jacked as hell in situ and had like a flashlight jammed in the back of his head to make his eyes light up. And like if you had any of that involved, it looked like, a Lars von Trier horror moment. Um, I love that the, pieces of the cantina basically got found at various points in time, still sitting out in the desert. Like, oh, this is a thing that people might want. Like, I love all of that about it. That's not so much the making of, but just like the way it continued to just exist there in a weird sort of stasis.
Yeah, I love so much of it for me is just like how I love the stories of how the rest of the films got made and they were made like huge big sort of I don't want to say Hollywood movies because they were never that. I mean, well, maybe the sequel trilogy, right? But the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy were made as indie films,
Yeah.
right? Like if you watch, I don't know if you've seen the movie Fog City Mavericks, or if you watch any of the behind the scenes of like THX 1138 or American Graffiti, or any, I mean, like if you dive deep into the behind the scenes of A New Hope far enough, like, and you watch any of the behind the scenes of any of these really terrific like indie filmmakers, stuff like listen to the audio commentary. I mean, if you want a Star Wars tie, Jon Favreau with Doug Liman's Swingers, which is, I
Yeah.
mean, really Jon Favreau's Swingers, or Robert Rodriguez and read his book Rebel Without a Crew, or um, Kevin Smith and the odyssey of him making Clerks, or whatever. Like that independent spirit of like, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna happen, and whatever happens between now and the end of production is what we're going to have.
Yeah.
And the movie comes out when the movie comes out, and this is how we have to do it, and these are the finite resources with which we have to do it, is so just inspiring to me. And it's something that's always had an allure, even when I was like a kid. And it's something that's really informed like just my entire ethos as a human being. Um, like that stick to itiveness, that creativity, that like we're going to find a way to make it happen, no matter what, within the time allotted, with the most creative means possible. That I think exemplifies. We talked about this with like ILM stuff, like that spirit that ILM embodies really originates with George too. And that's something that I think so many great filmmakers have. And that's like the thing I love the most. Like maybe if there's not like a specific behind the scenes story, it's just that whole spirit that embodies all of it.
Yeah.
Um, that's that thing I love that um George Lucas just kind of really overcame all of that stuff and made all of that stuff happen despite everything. And with A New Hope more than any of them. I mean, like he walked out there with $10 million. And $10 million in 1970, I mean 576 when he got that money, that's still a low budget movie, right? Like the big blockbusters at the time were 30, 40, 50, $60 million.
Yeah.
Um, $10 million was a drop in the bucket, especially for what he pulled off.
Yeah.
Like he pulled off a miracle for that money. And the idea that like someone else saved it or someone else made it happen, like there is no Star Wars without that beautiful madman threading all these ideas together and bringing out the absolute best and most creative in everyone
Yeah.
and making everyone work at their best.
Yeah. And then when you think about the legacy of it that really cannot be quantified, right? How many for that one low budget film with one guy who knew what he wanted to do to have reverberated so deeply with people that it inspired really an entire generation of filmmakers, but also people that don't work in film that just had their imagination sparked by it. Like his impact on obviously our lives, like we're in it. But also there are just so many people who maybe they don't necessarily like identify as like a super Star Wars fan, but they like Star Wars and they're like, oh yeah, that movie made me think about, what was possible creatively. Like there's so much creativity in the world today that that there's a direct line right back to Star Wars, and it's all because of this one person's script tenacity, leadership. It's astonishing to consider.
It's funny, I mentioned Kevin Smith, Robert Rodriguez, and Jon Favreau. All of those guys specifically can look to, I mean, like Clerks had that great Return of the Jedi monologue in it. And
Yeah.
there's no doubt Kevin Smith would tell you like Star Wars sparked that in him.
Yeah.
Rodriguez will cite that all day long, and he ended up as an executive producer and directing episodes of Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, and really loves Star Wars. Favreau, I mean, created Mandalorian and was just so into it, into Star Wars, and wears that love of Star Wars on his sleeve. And they all embody that same spirit.
Yeah.
And those are just three of those touchstones that really hit me. Um, when I was a teenager in the 90s, when they were doing their most indie work, their most isolated from the system work. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, it's a really astonishing,
What a
wonderful thing.
legacy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do like I understand, like I know Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola has this chip on his shoulder for Star Wars, that he feels that it was so popular that it robbed us of one of the most interesting filmmakers in history. And I can't, as much as I love Star Wars and I love everything it's brought us, and I love all of I love everything George Lucas has brought us in that universe, but it's hard to argue with Coppola about that also.
Yeah.
Um, and the one time I got to formally interview George Lucas, and he talked about how he was going to make his movies for his friends or whatever. That's how he was going to spend his retirement.
Hmm.
I was just so excited about that. He was like, I don't know if I'm not even going to distribute them. I'm just going to make them for myself. And I was just like, oh, I really hope that you do, because there's so many of us who just do want to see them, because I just really love the way he thinks in cinematic form.
Yeah.
Like we did that THX episode not long ago.
Oh, that
A-
movie.
And I want to see more of that guy's movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you.
Um, I want to see more Star Wars too. I want my cake, and I want to eat it too, Holly.
I understand. I understand.
I want more, and I know I shouldn't.
To make this a slightly inappropriate moment, have I ever told you that I had to be in somewhat of an altered state to understand the saying you cannot have your cake and eat it too?
No, no, but I guess I'm not surprised.
Well, because here's the problem, right? The verb to have gets used both as ownership and as a synonym for eating, right?
Yeah,
What are you
no,
having for
I
dinner?
gotcha.
Pasta. And so I was like, if you're having it, you are eating it. It didn't occur to me that what it was about was like diminishing the actual item, like that if you eat it,
Yeah,
you no longer possess it. And I was like, oh, I see.
yeah.
I was in my 20s before I figured that one out, just FYI. Listen, some of us aren't smart.
I would never accuse you of not being smart, but I didn't know you in your 20s either.
I mean, yeah, I don't. Listen, I used the verb to have in the sense of to eat all the time.
Well, I also think this is probably one of those phrases that originated long before that was popular parlance.
Yes, probably. I'm gonna look it up. Carry on.
No, um the making of the Star Wars movies, the making of movies in general is something that's always fascinated me. And George Lucas's role in making movies, whether it's as a cameraman on Gimme Shelter, or which is weird, like he was a cameraman at the Altamont Speedway at the Rolling Stones concert when that guy got stabbed,
Yeah.
or helping Francis Ford Coppola rescue The Godfather, or just following him around on The Rain People, which is such a fascinating way to make a movie. Look up The Rain People and look up the the documentary that George Lucas made in tandem with it. For folks who aren't familiar with it, especially in the wake of the passing of Robert Duvall,
Yeah. For that
before
one,
Star
sure.
Wars was made, even before THX 1138 was made, Francis Ford Coppola had been given money for his sort of initial American Zoetrope endeavor. And Rain People was sort of really the first movie they were setting out to make. And it was this new way of filmmaking. They were gonna make this movie, and it was gonna be a little bit loosey goosey, and they were gonna drive from one side of the country to the other filming it. And they got a line item in the budget for George to make a documentary about the filmmaking, and he was gonna release that, and that was gonna help them as well, and it was gonna promote the movie, but also George and Robert Duvall starred in it, and it's actually a really good movie, and it made a tidy profit, and that's actually what got THX made, and the whole like investment in Zoetrope because it did numbers, and it's a really fascinating look at the movie and all of the stuff that went into that, and sort of that early indie filmmaking spirit where these guys just packed a van full of film equipment, and like this was going to be their mobile production studio across the country. And it was just this really lovely dream.
That's sort of like one of those things where no one ever told them they couldn't, so it didn't occur to them that it wasn't a thing.
Yeah. um if you watch that movie, like if you watch, I think it's called Filmmaker, is the documentary that George Lucas made. If you watch that, and then if you watch Fog City Mavericks, and then if you watch the documentary about Coppola making Apocalypse Now, and you watch
Oh
like
yeah, Hearts of Darkness.
Hearts of Darkness, and you watch like this era of filmmaking and the indie revolution that Coppola and Lucas and all those guys were a part of, that they were trying to make, it's so fascinating and it's so heartbreaking that the studios just sort of broke them.
Yeah.
But we've got Star Wars now.
Yeah, incidentally, Thomas Howard III, Duke of Norfolk, is the one that introduced the you can't have your cake and eat it too. Although his wording was a man cannot have his cake and eat his cake. It's a little different.
Yeah, yeah. It
Anyway.
definitely clarifies the usage of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you for this trip down etymology lane.
you should do a stuff you missed in history
It's already on my list. It's already
just
on my
about
list.
random etymology.
Oh, no, about him. Yeah.
Oh,
I thought we would do him.
I can't tell you how many interesting random etymology rabbit holes I go down.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, but just a fun episode of quick hits of random etymology would be fun. Um, but anyway, where can people find you, Holly?
I am on Instagram as Surly Girly 5. Is that right? I think so. On Blue Sky as Holly Fry. I'm still making Stuff You Missed in History Class, which you can now not only listen to in your favorite podcast player, but also watch on Netflix if you so desire. There will be same show, just now you have cameras. Um, I am also still appearing on the current season of The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd on the History Channel. New episodes air on Friday nights, so check that out if that sounds interesting. I think Monster Quest ran all of its episodes. I haven't kept up. I apologize. All of that. How about you, Mr. Young?
You can find me across social media at Swankmatron or at swankmatron.com. And you can find all of my stuff that I'm doing and my upcoming appearances there. The next most exciting one, I'm doing an online writing workshop with Mike Stackpole, the infamous Star Wars writer, and another human being who is one of the editors at Simon and Schuster. The three of us are doing an online writing workshop in
Amazing.
June, and you can find out details about that on my website at swankmatron.com. And then yeah, that's about it. As far as Full of Sith goes, you can join us at fullofsith.com and check out the entire back catalog of episodes, uh, stretching back through, well over a fifth of Star Wars's, uh, you know, tenure. And you can send us an email at holocron@fullofsith.com, and you can rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it. If you enjoy this, don't be shy about telling your friends or whatever. I'm not the boss of you. Um, Anything else, Holly?
No, I think you did an admirable job. Also, is Mike Stackpole infamous?
Uh, he's more than famous. He's infamous. I don't know. I really like Three Amigos also.
Yeah, but other than that, I think you've admirably captured all that we need to capture.
He's notorious? I don't know. Um, so for the infamous Mike Pilot, super producer, and for Holly Fry, I'm Brian Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.